This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome, team. We'll start off in about 20 seconds. Alrighty, just confirmation, Ariel, that you can see the slides okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. Excellent. Hey, welcome along, team. My name is Mike Roberts, and I'll be hosting the session tonight. Tonight, we're going to be covering relatively in a fast-paced manner, a bit of a highlight reel of all the sort of key takeaways that a bunch of us wanted to bring back to New Zealand, Australia from our visit over to the PMI Global Summit. That was earlier this year in September, October in America. So the whole purpose is to sort of bring some of this value, bring some of these learnings, bring some of these takeaways to our local chapters for hopefully some inspirations and maybe some challenging ideas for us to sort of think about how we do things into 2025. This session's been recorded. I will send you all an email tomorrow with a link to the recording and a copy of their slides for reference. If you've got any questions beyond that, feel free to let me know and the team know. I'll share our contact details after this as well. So without further ado, I will run through a bit of an introduction, go through a bit of a summary of how tonight's events will work, and we'll try and keep this moving at quite a fast pace. So buckle in. All right, so the Global Summit is held every year in America. This year it was in Los Angeles on the 18th to the 21st of September. It is PMI's signature event, and this year, I guess, held the record of the most number of attendees with about 4,000 plus attendees. It normally runs from about Wednesday through to about Saturday. So about 4 days of inspiration, masterclasses, learning, discussions, networking, lots of stuff, lots of value for those who are involved in PMI, but also just involved in all things project management, governance, technology, advancements. It's just everything to do with forever changing organizations. That's what PMI is effectively all about. Beyond this, classic conference type things, well, it was held at the Los Angeles Convention Center. There's a couple of attendees who did manage to catch a glimpse of George Clooney and Brad Pitt as they were sort of promoting their new Wolves movie. So it was in the center of Hollywood. There were some pretty cool behind the scenes tours of the SoFi Stadium, LAX, massive airport, of course, and of course, being in Hollywood, the Warner Brothers behind the scenes tours as well. So you get a bit of a chance to look at these massive landmarks within the eyes of a project. Now, a bit closer to home, there are some celebrations for the Melbourne chapter and my trainer Lee on the call tonight, who won some pretty prestigious awards. So PMI Melbourne chapter Woohoo! And my congratulations for your Leadership Impact Awards. So some pretty significant contributions locally, but of course represented and recognized on a global scale. So that's awesome news. There were a grand total of about 15 volunteers and practitioners from both sides of the ditch who went along to the conference, and 3 of us even managed to get on the stage and speak. So that was pretty cool. It's always great to sort of not only learn from the world's best, but also try and help contribute with our thought leadership as well. So getting on to tonight's session, we have a bit of a 3-part lineup tonight, followed by a bit of a breakout. So we are going to cover, so Simon and Annie are going to start the show, and they'll cover some of the key highlight reels of the keynote sessions, sort of the inspirational, I guess, thought leadership, which sort of propels us outside of our organization to think more broadly, more deeply in terms of the skills we have as project managers and how they could be applied a lot more than beyond a spreadsheet in a Gantt chart. Then we'll hand over to Ariel around generative AI. Of course, a bit of a buzzword, bit of a sort of a leading trend at the moment, and there was lots of talk at the conference around AI. So Ariel's done her best to try and combine and distill all that information into some pretty, I guess, short but powerful words to hopefully give you some inspiration to go on and tackle that next year. And then we'll hand over to Gia and my talking about all things leadership, which of course is a key important part of our roles as project managers. Now, we're going to have roughly 10 to 15 minutes per segment here. And then after the back of all of this, we'll then go into some breakout sessions to then have some conversations. I'll send out some details in the group chat around what breakout sessions are for which topic. and feel free to get amongst it, share some stories, and then we'll go through a bit of a wrap up. Now, if people want to stay back and go beyond the hour that we have tonight and keep talking, then we are happy to facilitate that. So we will eject people out of the breakouts as we start to sort of close out tonight's session. But if you want to stay on, then feel free to let us know, and we'll just keep on talking about some of the things that we are covered tonight. If you are aware of some things that were spoken at the conference which you don't cover, let us know, and we'll look to build that into a talk in the new year. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Simon and Annie, please, talking about all things keynote speakers.
Thank you, Mike. Simon.
First, I'll kick off with talking about Abdelaziz, but he was introduced by the CEO of PMI, who is Pierre Lehmann, and he opened with a couple of statements and talked about Jim Schneider, who was the first CEO of PMI and the most famous founder. And he met up with him and asked him, what do you think I should do as a CEO? And he talked about bringing people together as being a prime focus for him as the CE, and also for PMI to stay on top of the art and science of project management. So these are wise words, and unfortunately, he's now passed away, the Jim Schneider. He also talked about PMI Next, which is a review of the PMI strategy and a real focus on the purpose of PMI, which was to maximize project success to elevate our world. And that was a key theme through the whole conference. And this was about bringing values and recognition to the role of project managers. And he gave a summary of PMI Infinity, which is the PMI's chat GPT tool, which has vetted info in a closed loop system, which is really the sales point. And then he talked about updates to the website to make it more user-friendly, which was really nice for him to hear. So moving on to Abdelaziz. So this guy was, he was amazing. He had a real focus on helping organizations and finding purpose and meaning within their work. And again, this was quite a common theme throughout most presentations that I picked up from the summit. He talked about leveraging their work for good. And he had an impressive track record working with some large companies like you've seen. He did used to work for Procter & Gamble, Heineken, Nokia, Absolute Vodka, and primarily in marketing around telling better stories. But he did a bit of soul searching, especially when he had his children, and he went on a journey of discovery and wanted to reflect on his career and what his legacy would be as he left the world. And this meant that he actually exited the corporate life and founded a company called the Conspiracy of Love. He's done a bunch of work with PMI on finding PMI's purpose for maximize project success to elevate our world. And he talks a lot about the power of purpose within project management, and he's been working with PMI very closely. He's also talked, this was what I found really fascinating. So the world needs to decarbonize, and there's a slide where he talks about decarbonizing everything, which is really where the world is going. And to achieve the Paris Agreement goals, the UN estimate that would be another 25 million project managers that are required to achieve this, but also the opportunity in solving the UN SDGs, which is around $12 trillion per year in work globally. So good work, future proofing for us. He also talked about purpose-driven organizations getting higher returns, so 3 times their closest competitors and 5 times the S&P 500 average. So it's not just about doing good, it's also about, you know, good capitalist growth as well, which I think the two often disconnect. And then he talked about personal purpose, so looking for your reason for being and spending time to get clear on this, so you know you're happier and more productive in your work. So moving on to Marita Chang. So this is an amazing lady. She has a really interesting journey. She grew up in Cairns. She developed a fascination for tech. Her brother, she was reading a Time magazine that her brother had, that had Steve Jobs, and that really sparked her interest in technology. She studied, her parents actually assumed that she would go on to be a doctor and should go on to be a doctor, and she challenged them and studied engineering. She moved to Melbourne, and that's where she studied. She observed quite quickly that it was a very male-dominated area. 10 in her class of 150 were females. So that inspired her to found RoboGirls. And RoboGirls is about robots. So combining mechanical engineering with technology to work on robots that would then inspire them to get into engineering. So this is within schools. She then went on to study at the Imperial College of London, studying mechanical engineering, and again in the class of aerospace engineering, got 2 females out of 70, 15 out of 150 in mechanical engineering, and 4 out of 120 in computer science. So this really fueled her desire to increase female representation within this discipline. So she took robo girls to the world, and she did this through a big dance event, and this was really interesting because initially it failed, and she actually had to send some emails around saying to those just to try and promote people that the first couple of events were really successful. In all reality, no one turned up, but word spread, and soon enough she had people that were turning up to these events, and this was to promote this great idea that she had around robo girls and getting females involved within engineering. It's now, so the growth has been huge, and hopefully people can see that there are more female representation in engineering. Robo Girls is now in Australia, North America, and Europe, and it's really a feeder for young females in schools to then get into this discipline through secondary and tertiary education and then professional careers. She then went on to use these exercises to make a difference in the world. And one way she made a difference was through this application that you would use on your phone, and you would scan things, blind people, so they could see what it was. And it would be like a can of Coke or a lift or a car, so they could then change the way that they lived. It was huge for blind people, and is really successful. She's been named the Young Australian of the Year as a result, and is on the New Zealand Australian Order of Merit. She also made this really interesting device. So this is something that follows people around who might be at home by themselves to make sure that they're safe. So it's a camera that then communicates back to their caregivers to say they're okay. So these seemed reasonably simple innovations that change people's lives. She's a big believer in 3-month goals and things like technology free days. So despite being an avid lover of technology, she also is a firm believer in switching off for extended periods. And the final slide from me is she was a big advocate for doing those scary things that you're perhaps a bit apprehensive or insecure about. Her advice was just tackle them, have a big, hairy, audacious goal that you really want to embrace. And she was an extremely inspirational young female.
Awesome. Thanks, Simon. Moving along to Annie.
Thanks, Mike. The closing keynote was a chap called Mick Ebling. Now, there's so much to talk about with respect to Mick. He's been one of the most inspiring people that I have listened in my 11 plus years of going to PMI conferences. Actually, it's 14 years. That's a bit depressing. Anyway, he's absolutely amazing. He's the founder and CEO of Not Impossible Labs. The things that I particularly like about Mick is that he was the absolutely most relatable keynote. He's just an ordinary person, much like you or I. And the key facet to bring that back to project management, he's a very optimistic and determined problem solver. So that's really what I loved about him. So moving on to his first statement that completely has stayed with me, and I've been living my life by this from the 20th of September. He says, commit, then figure it out. If somebody comes up with a good idea or a problem that they need solving, he's there to give the commitment and then figure it out. And a little personal story. Simon and I went to a baseball match to watch the Dodgers, and we got an Uber there. And then when we tried to get an Uber back, the wait time in the ballpark was over an hour. And we all kind of looked at each other. Oh, we had a scammer in the car park who was trying to make us pay like $100 or something to get an Uber back. And we were like, nah. And we kind of had a chat to each other. We just went, let's find a way out. We'll commit first and then figure it out later. And we walked out of the park. We were using Google Maps. We found somewhere. We were watching the flow of the traffic. We remained really optimistic. We got to a point where we could see the traffic was actually flowing. Managed to get an Uber, $25. The four of us got home safely. I know it's little things, but then I've applied that to my life. I've had a massive stress of moving house this year, and had a lot of challenges thrown at me, including mortgages approved and then denied, and having to figure stuff out to reach a goal. So definitely been practicing this mantra and finding a way through. The key thing where he founded the Not Impossible Labs is, our human spirit, we like to do things that are easy and we can give up really easily. And he just asked us to reflect on, name something that is possible today that wasn't impossible first. And we look at things like even, obviously the obvious stuff is things like the moon landing, the internet. And then you look at things like that Marita Cheng is doing. That app, you don't need internet to use that app for the blind, which is absolutely amazing. I wanted to close out with Mick. The other thing that I loved about him, and tying this back to Simon and all of the keynotes, is genuine for purpose projects that he does. And when I've gone through a lot of stress this year with moving house, as I've said, and some other major changes, but I really love this inspirational phrase: when everything seems too hard, if you've got energy, quoting Dr. Seuss here, got brains in your head and energy in your feet, you can do something and make a difference. So refuse to die until you have won some victory for humanity. Now, I wanted to share in the last couple of minutes, there's a particular project called Project Daniel that he worked through. This young man, Daniel, was in Sudan, which was a really war-torn conflict zone. And there was a lot of bombs and shelling going off and people losing limbs. And this young man lost his arms. He was hiding behind a tree, but he was hugging the tree. And unfortunately, he survived, but he got both his arms blown off. Mick was inspired enough to go and do something for Daniel to get him prosthetic limbs. So here's the video just to close out. Thank you, Mike.
There's this thing in me that loves to see things that are supposed to not be done, be done.
Daniel is just one of 50,000 amputees left in the wake of the bloodiest war Africa has ever known. We flew into an active war zone in Sudan with 3D printers, laptops, spools of plastic, and the goal to build Daniel an arm. You ready? The concept of Project Daniel was hatched on July 11th. And on November 11th, Daniel fed himself for the first time in 2 years. But it's never about just one person. If we could teach the locals to do it themselves, then Project Daniel could live on long after we left. And it did.
Cool. Hey, thanks, Annie. Thanks, Simon. It's pretty hard to really sort of cover the level of depth involved in 10 minutes. But I guess the key takeaway is there is just lots of value that we take for granted as project managers in terms of working with teams, focusing objectives, overcoming constraints, which if you could think broader than our day-to-day projects, we can make some pretty meaningful impacts on other people's lives. So take that with you into 2025. All right, let's move on to AI. Ariel, over to you, please.
Thanks, Mike. So AI was everywhere at the conference. In fact, it was quite hard to get into the presentations on AI. You had to be there early, and so many of them I've been listening to on demand, and I've been struggling to select just a few for this. So the Global Summit talks covered really different levels of AI use. There were a lot of pieces that are about of AI that can be applied as an individual, both in your personal life, but also your professional life. But you don't need much from the organization to do it other than permission to use the tools. And then as the scale of the problem and the data increases, and you've got more data and process quality being reinforced, and the company's willingness to invest in infrastructure and train people in using it, you get these really large solutions that are applied by the organization, the real AI projects. And there was the whole spectrum in between. So with the pieces that are applied by the individual, Annie Sheehan gave an excellent talk on this, very inspiring. So that's the area that we're kind of already a bit comfortable in using ChatGPT, etc. But it just opened my mind to how much more you can do than just ask it to give you a title for a slide. So you can use PMI's own tool, Infinity AI, which uses the ChatGPT model, but is based on all of the standards and guidance and high quality project management information in the PMI universe. And you can ask it to create a template, not just the knowledge that is in there, but relating it to your situation, saying this country, this industry, give me a risk management template, and you get really meaningful information. So I found that a lot of it just kind of cuts through the first 80% really quickly if you prompt well. And you can have scripts for tricky conversations. I mean, everybody had AI generated images in the talks, and there was a lot of laughter over what they came up with. You can start problem solving, and I mean, meeting minutes is a really big one that all kinds of people are using. And I've been using it. I always like to experiment in my personal life, so I've been kind of going, give me ideas for Christmas presents for my kids, or doing a competitor analysis for me, getting some really good things. But don't just limit yourself to one tool, and there'll be a list of tools at the end. Some people kind of use one tool and get it validated in another, and then run it through another to get more current information. So be a bit versatile. Then I'll talk about the next step, not quite, sorry, Mike, of having more character-based AIs with the subject matter experts. And then you get to the big organizational ones where you need large, bespoke language models, automation, real-time quality control, and then you get into scheduling, risk management strategy. And that's the end where all of the vendors in the exhibit hall were playing and trying to sell you solutions for this, which only work if your company does the work itself to be ready for that and gets the data right. So there was a lot of conversation on the next slide about when do you use AI? And a lot of it did come down to judgment, the human touch, the need to evaluate. And most talks started with that, use it for the repetitive and simple tasks and get that increase in effectiveness. And I quite liked Ramona and Yasmina's model, taking it a step further. So that's your first entry level, but if you put the work into the data, into the training, and really that high quality prompting, then you can use it in research and data analysis a lot. Where you definitely need the human touch, the emotional intelligence is when you're dealing directly with people, what you're doing affects people. So that is individual and team development. And then you marry the best of both worlds in strategizing and decision making and making sure that you have that pattern recognition and that combination of disparate pieces of data together with that human evaluation and that judgment and calling, does this make sense? Next slide, please. Now, I've always worked in smallish organizations, so I got pretty excited about these examples from the construction industry of what is possible when an organization really invests in AI. So we had Michael Wang from the Ontario Power Generation talking about revolutionizing your risk radar, leveraging Gen AI for superior project insight. And they created their own chat GPT based model that ran on their internal data, but still used the chat GPT external universe and model. And what would happen is you'd create a project, and based on the scope and other parameters, chat OPG as they call it, would then scan their internal large language model, looking at risks, actions, issues, lessons learned, and it would say, okay, this project has 81% similarity with project X and 60% similarity with project Y, and based on that, you need to be aware of these risks, and it would build out the first risk register, adjust the schedule, and all of that, and even things like if you have a schedule overrun, you're going to get into winter, and in Canada, you cannot get heavy machinery through the ice. And he was talking about building nuclear power plants. Their first module that they built was a 3-year project. Their second module that they were on was 160 days ahead of schedule because of using this insight. But that doesn't just happen. Before they even got the AI, they spent 10 years investing in their data infrastructure, getting everything squeaky clean, recorded the same way, people trained in how to use it so that they had the quality data to achieve what are really amazing results. And then they go further, and now they have an enterprise AI strategy that focuses on really making it work on all fronts, focusing on ethics, education, enablement, and sustainment. So it's not one and done, but keep working on it, keep refining, keep evaluating. Then we had Abigail Mia Ali talking about AI-driven quality management in construction projects. And so, there's the overall mantra: quality control, effectiveness, compliance, and managing risk. But more specifically, she talked about using computer vision systems, so drone technology and other cameras for quality field inspection. So you've got the drones and the cameras registering. Is everybody wearing their steel cap boots? Have they got their helmets on? Are people entering forbidden areas, etc.? You set all of these quality and safety parameters, and there is real-time reporting, and you find out before someone falls off the roof, basically. So hopefully many fewer people falling off the roof thanks to this. The other thing is then using sensor technology. So either Bluetooth, I think, was sort of short range, or Internet of Things, longer range sensors. And the example that she shared was concrete hardening. That's on your critical path, how long does it take for your concrete to harden so you can do the next step? And currently, people are having a separate batch that they harden, and they do a crush test, but instead you can put a sensor in the concrete, and then you're ready to go as soon as it's hard. And another example was predictive maintenance, really tracking and scheduling maintenance for large equipment so that it's never out of commission, but is maintained in an effective manner. And there were more examples. Every single one of these talks, I'd like to show you multiple slides, but I also want the range. So next talk, please. Alexander Moen, gorgeous talk, so much in there, but just focusing on a small part of revolutionizing collaboration and decision-making with AI-driven project management. And that's using AI to create what I call useful characters, so a whole kind of fake person, I guess. It talked about creating virtual subject matter experts. Often it's hard to get the subject matter expert when you need them. And this is a way of kind of, again, you can't totally replace them, you shouldn't, but it's getting all of the easy stuff out of the way. So you got to preach, were his words. So you really have to prompt well, define your subject matter expert. What's the problem statement? What's their role? Give them exact detail. Add in their ecosystem, the stakeholders they're dealing with, their constraints. Give them a cast, and then you get a lot of that input. And then you go on. You know which questions you still have to ask the subject matter expert, or get them to again evaluate that things are on track. But you're being a lot more. You've got a lot better time control of how much of their time you need. But always, develop easy rules to evaluate your new tools. Are the standards that you can be applying showing that the AI is adhering to them? And these characters are only going to get bigger. So create agentic AIs who are goal-driven. For example, you send an AI agent to a meeting with specific questions you want asked, and they're asking them in your name. They're finding out the information you need. Create AI avatars of yourself that are sort of your first level of screening, answering those repetitive questions that everybody needs to ask you, but really an AI with enough of them knowledge of how you answer can cut through a lot of that. Or have like a little Jiminy Cricket's AI sitting on your shoulder in a meeting, giving you live personal feedback. You've been talking a bit long. Let somebody else get a word in edgewise. And to me, this is kind of, how everybody says, some days I just wish I could clone myself. Well, it's coming. So on to the next talk, please. I come from a science background, so I just love this talk that was all about data and having good data. Again, would love to show you so many slides from here. So AI projects require a different mindset and skill set from your classic software development projects. It doesn't work that way that you say, I'll just bring my IT team in to do the AI project. So Anna Lukasiak was talking about the many challenges of AI project implementation. Getting your data right, doing good training, having the right skills, having the right expectations, knowing that many data projects fail. 80% of AI projects are data, and 87 of them fail the first time around. Learn. So you can't just put your software team on, because software teams are thinking in more functional terms. They have a linear process, and AI is very data-driven, experimental. It's following the pattern. It's organic and almost more of a web approach. Let's see where this takes us, and it builds around that. So you have to put a lot of effort into training the models, and sometimes when the model, goes off track, you have to throw out the model and start afresh. It's not the same as, batching out your code development. Again, with that web analogy, it's a lot more complex than software deployment, because you have to see how this AI integrates into all of your systems. I mean, data stored in different places, different applications using it. And
excuse me, just 1 minute left.
Okay. Monitor the outputs, because AI can go off track, and consider the ethics. Last slide. So some of the things, so many numbers. 72% of organizations have adopted AI in at least one business function, usually marketing. Administrative tasks are going to be reduced by 50 or 80%, depending on whom you believe. So a lot of concern and angst around that, but you will not be replaced by AI, but you will be replaced by a project manager who uses AI. And just using AI is not enough. What counts is how well you use it, how you leverage it. So some words of caution. Assume that your AI is only right 75% of the time. Always check and evaluate. Be aware that, we know of a lot of risks. They're not all being mitigated yet. think about source attribution and data privacy and ethical frameworks. These are really rapidly developing areas. And if you want to take a screenshot, there is a Google Sheet that I've put together with a list of tools that have been created, that the presenters suggested for project managers. It's not complete, it's still a bit messy, but there's a lot to play around with in there. So, have a play, see how you can use it at the individual level, see what your work is doing at the operational level.
Awesome. Thanks, Ariel. Right. Gia and Mai, over to you around all things leadership.
Awesome, thank you. I'll make a start and then I'll pass that on to Gia. So leadership, I think that is such a term that we've used over the last few, to be honest, centuries. There were a lot of sessions during the summit that covered this, and there's some great ones even from Mike, who also presented on it. So we've selected just a couple of few, I'll say, areas of skills, topics that we think would be quite key as project leaders as we evolve into the new century. So the first one was around words matter, the power of inclusive language. So it was presented by Deborah Howe, the director of IT operations in Cornell University. And I think as project leaders, we all know communication is quite key to managing your team, your stakeholders. So recognizing inclusive language and having the significance it has to promote equality, equity, and respect really in the workforce is quite key as leaders in the future. So I think that what we spoke about is, I'll pull out probably 4 key themes that I saw from this particular session. And I'm trying to squeeze it in less than 2.5 minutes for 1 hour or so session that we had. So number one, I'll say, is the impact of language. I think, that's quite key for all of us, that language has such a large effect on individuals, especially how we perceive, how we treat others, how we uplift each other's, or do we feel devalued by some of the words spoken or written language. So being mindful of the language we use and how we create such an inclusive environment is quite important to ensure others feel respected and valued as well. Number 2 is also gender inclusive language. So we all know that in today's world we try to highlight the importance of gender neutral languages, right, to avoid the different stereotypes that you will see in the workforce. So the example is as simple as spouse or partner, rather than calling the person your husband or wife, or the child's being a child rather than a son and daughter. Simple as that actually makes a big difference, especially in different conversation that you might have in your various engagement. The third point is avoiding the whole stereotype between the LGBTQIA+, right? I'm trying to make sure I'm inclusive and covering the bias behind all this, because we do need to be more cautious against using this language that might reflect negatively in stereotypes that we see around the workforce. And so, there is various words and terms that we can use, and something that we will share as part of the resources is a guide behind some of these terminology that we can use. So the speaker actually encouraged us to move away of these language and assumptions that we're making for the individuals. And I think the fourth one that I saw was around challenging was ableist and classist language, right? There is harmful impact of these languages that devalue some people with certain disability, and I think having that empathy and understanding behind what these mean. So there is words like quite common for people to say, it's so crazy here, or no, I'll lend you a hand. So for those who have certain disability, I think it's quite key that we just need to respect the others. So who knows, in the workforce, many people do have families. They may not talk about it, but they may have certain belief and impact it has when you're actually having conversation with them. So in other words, the words does matter. So it's more a call to action as individuals, so that we can think and be more aware, self-aware, and be more intentional in the way that we select the words or the language that we pick as we conversing with others. And if we can actively embrace these language and promote inclusivity respect and ensure understanding that will actually improve the way that we engage and communications that we have amongst others in our team, in the group, and even just general society itself. So so there was I think the guide was from the American Psychological Association. They released it a couple months back, so it's a second edition. And it does give you lots of examples and suggested words, alternative into various aspects of the society and how you can actually engage with others. So then the next session there's a really interesting one from Samira was around Gen Z. So I'm sure you all are working with various different groups, and Gen Z are quite key to the future leaders of the world. So understanding Gen Z, how essential they are to business or projects in the changing world we have. And I know I've worked with a number of them in my own workplace as well. And I think what we covered in the Samira was saying was there's 4 key values from Gen Z. One, Gen Z is diverse, right? Number 2, they care a lot about what the future holds for them. Number 3, they're very transparency and trust is quite core to their personal value. And number 4 is the balance, right? Having a balanced life. And what does that mean? So when I mentioned value earlier, it's around having a social impact, advocating for causes. We talk a lot about that in society. Gen Zs are amongst the group that is advocating a lot behind this, whether that be climate change, social justice. And was
it a 30-second wrap up there, Mai, before I hand over to Gia?
Sorry?
Just a 30-second wrap up before I hand over to Gia?
We'll do. And so to wrap that up, and I'll hand it to Gia in a sec. So recognizing the Gen Z and the potential they have and the value they have will help us greatly in pursuing the future of a society and the projects that we lead in collaboration. So Gia, pass it on to you.
Thank you, Mai. The next topic I'm going to discuss is personal branding. I attended Tyler Norman's session in person, and the reason why I decided to go to that one, I'm not Gen Z, but millennial, and I'm supposed to be good at social media, but I honestly hate it. So I decided I need to do some work on LinkedIn. I decided to go to that session. Tyler provided some actionable framework and guidance, and he talks about personal branding is the information we basically share about ourselves with others, like our skills and expertise and what unique value proposition we have. And you might be asking, why do I need to manage it? But, at the end of the day, it's a question whether you manage it or you let others to define it. So I found it's quite empowering quote from Tyler. And when I walked away from session, I thought, oh, well, it's quite similar to managing a project. So when you approach your personal branding, you think about the statement, what your personal branding you want to look like, and you gradually work towards that goal. So you set up a roadmap of tasks and activities. And similar to project management, you will have your own group of stakeholders, either your mentors, colleagues, your friends, or networking events you go to, your influencers. So you need to be very careful about the messaging and your direction of the personal branding. Tyler thinks that you can also have another strategy separately to LinkedIn as well, and be quite consistent and have consistent messaging. Don't use LinkedIn to share what you had for dinner. That's not the place. But you can use LinkedIn to share about your skills and your area of interest. There are a few things that he suggested. One is the ratio of direct post and reposting. So it's better have 3-to-1 of repost to your direct post. And again, don't share too much information about yourself. Limit to 1 post per week. And if you're such an amazing person, you're like getting lots of awards every week, please don't post it every week. Just space it out between within the months, so people won't think that you are self-promoting yourself. So be very strategic of what you're sharing on the LinkedIn. There were lots of tips from Tyler, and if you're interested to learn more, he actually coming and to present in February for PMI Queensland at the Lunch and Learn session. So I'll invite you all to join us there. I'm sure you will enjoy it as I did. And Mike, to the next slide, please. The other sessions I attended and quite enjoyed it about stress management and resilience. There were lots of sessions around it. And you might be thinking, why do I need to think about stress? I am enjoying my job and my life, but we have lots of things at hand, raising kids, looking after family, commuting, as Annie mentioned, moving countries and moving houses. And stress can add up and stress can follow you. And even if you change your job or your country, I'm pretty sure the stress will find you there. So we need to do some inner work to be better leaders, to be better humans, so we can get better project outcomes and be more successful in life. What I liked in this session with Anne-Marie, that she provided some tips that we learned before and we know about, but she backed them up with science and facts. For example, the one I like the most is power pause. I'm sure we've all been in a situation where we sent, angry email or, responded with nasty comment. So the reason why we do it, when we're in a high stress state, our brain fires up so many chemicals and we just need to wait until that passes through us. And then when we're better equipped with emotions, with actions, and we can better respond to stress once that time passes. The other thing, she talks about breathing, and again, there's a science behind it. She suggests to breathe when you're stressed, and the reason why is our body is connected to brain. Our heart is connected to brain. There are actually heart cells in brain. I had no idea. So when you breathe in, you actually calm down your body and you're sending a signal to your brain to say, actually, this is cool, I am calm, there's nothing to worry about, so that your brain would not react to the environment. And there were other lots of research and articles shared by Anne-Marie, and I quite enjoyed the session. That's me. Thank you.
Cool. Hey, thanks, Mai. Thanks, Gia. There's some links to some useful resources. Again, these slides will be heading your way. Right. What we're going to do now, team, is we're going to jump into a 7-minute breakout session, quick fire, just a chance to connect. I mean, PMI is all about connecting and networking, right? So here are some options some questions to consider. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste in some of the main in the chat here. Bear with me a second. In the chat is some different meeting room numbers with meeting room topics. If you want to talk more with someone about a certain topic for 6 or 7 minutes, then feel free to jump into those chats. I have labeled one of us facilitators to jump in and facilitate the conversation there. So what could you relate to, and what is going to change next year for you based on some of the things we are talking about, or maybe what other ideas you've got to add to that? So opening the rooms now, jump into a room and get into it.
And Mike, can you take your slides down? Lovely. Okay. All right, everybody that wants to stay in the main room, do you want to stick your cameras on? Can I have a chat? I see Melody there. Hello, Melody.
Hi, Annie.
Hi there. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Working from home today.
All right.
I'm going to room 2 now.
Okay, lovely. We're just going to room 2. All right, who have we got here? Lena, Paul. I've got nobody. Paul, he's there. Lena. God, I'm going to be on my own.
That looks like
With Paul.
looks like we've got a few in different rooms. Maybe just jump into a room, Annie, unless you want to stay here. But
Yeah, that's all right.
we've got 4
work
minutes
here.
left, but it's up to you.
Yeah, look, I'll just stay here.
Cool. I'm gonna jump in, and what's a small room? Let's jump into room 2.
What's happened to Sky? Hi, Lena.
Hello. So it's okay. So yeah, I just been trying to work out, what who's in different rooms and what we're talking about. So that's been a little bit challenging.
Oh, okay. So in the chat, it was rooms 1 and 2 was about AI. Rooms 3 and 4 was about leadership.
Right.
Rooms 5 and 6 was about keynotes, but we didn't have anyone in room 6, so we just got room 5, and then it was me, ask me anything.
Okay. So yeah, look, because it was, as I said, I was just trying to find my way around. And I was interested in some of your comments, Annie. I guess as somebody who hasn't really, gotten into AI things
Mhm.
in any way, shape, or form. And I think I saw somewhere in the chat that you had some notes or something about, what's the best way to, start learning or
Get started,
where you
absolutely.
start. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's something we should do as a special event in February. It's just run another virtual event, and I can do my talk
Right.
then.
Yep.
Because there's been a lot of interest, and we just do a free talk in early February.
Yep.
Before kind of everything gets going.
Yep.
And I'm happy to do something. I mean, I had nearly 300 people in my session. And then I had over 50 people asking to connect on LinkedIn afterwards. And then I had people literally coming up to me in the queue for the ladies.
Right.
At the conference saying, thank you so much for showing me how to use ChatGPT. I can now use it and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, oh no, this is really great. So I've been using it for almost 2 years now. And I've used ChatGPT. I was an early adopter for PMI Infinity, and also an early user for Bing Copilot Designer. I also use Grammarly AI because I wrote a couple of books, and it was. I was just trying to say to people, don't be overwhelmed, but don't be stupid either. So how do you use it safely?
Right.
I've had people ask me. So I ran a presentation in February last year for Telstra, or February this year for Telstra. I had one guy saying, oh, should I be putting my business case in ChatGPT to check it? And I said, God, no, it's proprietary information. And once it's out there. So a lot of companies, especially government ones, they don't encourage the use of AI. But a lot of consulting companies and some of the banks and Telstra as well have developed their own AI tools. And, you heard about that construction company.
Right.
So you've got a bit of a closed loop happening there.
Yep.
So
well, I mean, I know even I work for a small biopharma consulting company, and we looked at we had a trial of an AI tool in I think it was within Microsoft Teams for note taking, and it became challenging just from a privacy perspective to because you had to get, of course, it relied on recording the meeting, having a transcript so that then, you could have access to the notes. And so it immediately became challenging because of privacy concerns.
Indeed. We're going to have to wrap there, Lena. We'll pass back to Mike, but connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a message.
I will, Annie. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I will. Ariel, there's Lena's just asked about the talk that I did. Maybe we should do something in early February. And I run that one again because we have a very large percentage of our project management user base that haven't used any of the AI tools because they're scared of them, or they don't know how. They don't know how to use them safely or ethically. So I think, a nice intro. And this is, going back to Ariel's point, with her key summaries, it was for everything from the complete novice to sort of the genius looking for the next big thing.
Right.
for their organizations, and it is very powerful. So it's important, just as important as it is to understand how to use Gantt charts and a spreadsheet to do your budgets and to use agile sprints, etc., and storyboards. This is very, very important for your toolkit. Anyway, back to Mike. Thanks for the chat.
Thank
It
you.
really did stimulate me to use AI more and in a more nuanced way.
All right, so just to sort of wrap things up, if people want to stay on and chat, we're more than welcome to jump back into the breakouts, but just to sort of formally wrap this up, so people who do need to go can go. There are some events happening next year already, so if you want to go to the next Global Summit, it's in Arizona in November. There's one slightly closer to home in Philippines in June. But hey, look, we're really keen to hear if you guys have some requests for your local chapters around certain topics or certain key points. Sounds like AI is going to continue to be a talking point to next year. Let us know either in the chat now or reach out to your local chapter members because we're always looking for ideas for topics. If you've got something to speak against, if you're a speaker or want to be a speaker, we're happy to talk to you as well. So look, I know tonight's been a lightning fast round, and hopefully you've got at least one or two takeaways from this. A lot of those speakers that we did mention tonight, they're more than happy to be connected with on LinkedIn. They're normally more than happy to sort of share a few more words of wisdom or maybe give you a bit of a demo into what they'll be talking about. Like Gia said, they're always happy to sort of come and talk to local chapter conferences. There's at least 2 of them I know of who are speaking at the New Zealand conference in May next year. So get amongst it. There's lots of information out there, lots of information you can learn from. So I guess without further ado, firstly, thank you to all the volunteers tonight who have spent a bunch of hours over the last few weeks, I guess, trawling through a bunch of recordings and a bunch of notes to try and distill information in its real bite-sized chunks and share with you tonight. So hopefully you got some value out of that, but I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I look forward to connecting with you all through PMI Chapter events in the new year. So thanks for joining in.
And thanks, Mike, for being an amazing MC and bringing us all together.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All good.
Thank you all.
Thanks a lot.
If you want to stay on tonight, feel free to stay on. If not, catch you later. Ka kite.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Maybe Ariel, if I can get you to stop the recording, please.